How's it going, guys? Hope you guys are enjoying your Friday. Anyways, where do I start? Well, welcome back to the newest installment of We Are in Crisis, episode 9. Uh, if you are new or a regular, please do me a favor and click that like button to boost me in the algorithm. So, for today's installment, we will be addressing a few people. If you can't make it to this live, then I hope that you are part of the replay game. Otherwise, I'm just going to begin. I don't know how long I'm going to keep this live. It's probably going to be a short live. I'm trying to get my weekly lives going. So, well, where do we start? We got to start with the situation at hand. The last time I went live, I discussed about the Canada shooter in the Canada shooter who was unfortunately going through an identity crisis of some sort. This person was fairly young. He was 18 years old and he just completely lost it, ended up taking the lives of his mother, stepbrother, and then he went to, I believe it was an elementary school. And I covered this during my previous live. He ended up taking the lives of at least five more people. Well, five children and a teacher. But a week later, at the very least, we have a situation where a new situation unfolds. This is why I always say everything you try to seek for yourself always has a benefit, but it can also have a risk attached to it. Basically, you don't want to make decisions without calculating the risks. And it can happen to anyone, but I think that if you make a decision and you don't calculate the risks, then you basically deserve more or less what you ignored in terms of consequences. That's what I believe in. For instance, I thought my life would turn out peachy after I came out. What was it, 8 years ago? Let's say, yeah, almost 8 years ago when I came out. I thought my life would be peachy and it would be completely different. I thought I would, well, it wasn't completely bad. I don't want to say it was completely bad, but I thought it was going to be magical and it would be brand new. I would be a completely new person with a lot of new opportunities ahead of me. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. I don't have as many people as I would like around me, and that's because I limited my own dating pool by choosing to date someone of my same gender. I can't blame someone else for it, nor should I take advantage of anyone because of that choice. I made that choice. So, this is why it's very important that people know how far they're willing to go. Because if you're not really confident with your decision to do anything, whether it's weight loss surgery, uh, coming out of the closet, or even transitioning, you cannot make these decisions and blame someone else for them because of your own unhappiness. You can't. That's not how it should be in general, but a lot of people don't care these days. A lot of people think that if I'm upset, then I have every right to make you feel just as upset as I am. And that's just not how life should work in general. Why should I carry your unhappiness or deal with the ramifications of your decisions because you weren't able to handle them maturely? That should not fall on my shoulders. But a lot of people think differently and they are very entitled with their thinking. They believe if they make a mistake and they feel unhappy after as a result of that mistake, then you should feel and bear the same unhappiness they feel each and every single day for that mistake. Basically, you have to feel the same as them, especially if you're related to them. So the saddest part of this whole story is that a week after that whole situation that took place in Canada, we run into a situation where there was this man by the name of Robert Dorgan. You may have heard of this story. You may have already read the news. You may have already seen videos covering it. But basically, what happened, if you haven't caught up to the news, is that this individual, he was, I would say, maybe roughly, I would say he was like close to 3 decades being married to his ex-wife, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He was married roughly about almost 30 years. They got divorced, I believe it was 2020 or 2021. I would say around that time frame. She divorced him because of irreconcilable, I don't even know how to say the word. Let's just say differences, right? I always struggle with that first word. And as a result, I believe she listed or cited initially the reason was because he was going through reassignment surgery. And I don't know if the reassignment surgery started before or during the divorce proceedings, but it may have been a little bit before the divorce took place. Anywho, that happened. They got divorced. And from what I read so far, it seems that Robert Dorgan, who was 56 years old, was unhappy with his gender reassignment surgery. The bottom line is, again, this can happen to, it doesn't even have to be transitioning alone. It could be anything. It could be a weight loss surgery. It could be uh, coming out of the closet. It could be transitioning, anything. But the reason is you have to look at it from this angle. He was unhappy with transitioning and becoming a trans. He was upset with it. I don't know if he thought his life would change overnight. That's exactly how I felt when I came out. I thought my life would change overnight. It was an unrealistic expectation because I ignored the consequences of, okay, if I come out, how will this affect me? I didn't really think it through and I didn't analyze it far enough where I felt confident with my decision. Do I regret it? No. But there were growing pains down the road because I underestimated how the risks of coming out. And one of those risks is that you limit your dating pool. And you think that your life will change completely. For instance, I felt miserable before I came out, but I thought that once I came out, my life would turn within a snap of a finger. Did that happen? No. I was still the same person. I just decided to come out. That's the difference right there. But some people have high expectations and it can cloud their judgment. Even though I'm not perfect and even though I don't claim that you should be either, you have to be mindful of how you come across as a person in terms of your interactions with people and in terms of your decisions that can affect yourself and everyone else around you. You have to be very mindful about it. But I really wanted to emphasize that this man just became completely unhappy. He clearly was in crisis mode because if he didn't feel that his life wasn't upside down, then why would he stoop so low? Basically, what ensued was tragic. He shared three kids with his ex-wife. And essentially, what happened is that they went to one of the children's, Colin, I believe his name was Colin. They went to his game, and I believe it was an ice rink, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume it was hockey. And essentially what happened next is that they were all sitting beside each other, and what he did eventually was he pulled a gun and he shot his ex-wife and he shot his oldest son. I believe he's the oldest of the three. And he shot his ex-in-laws and he also shot a family friend. Eventually, what happened is someone created interference, I believe, and then at some point, what he decided to do was basically shoot himself. That's essentially what he did. Once someone, like the daughter survived. Surprisingly, the daughter survived, and I believe that's when someone created interference. And then once that happened, he he basically pointed the gun at himself and he shot himself. Just tragic all around because this isn't something that should happen. Uh, I think this man was just conflicted and full of sadness to the point where he didn't even recognize nor register who he was harming at the time. But even if I feel a drop of empathy for what he's going through personally, it shouldn't have gone that far. And the fact that it went that far shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. It shouldn't be something where you go to this extreme. That's why I believe it was also listed. One of the reasons why the ex-wife divorced Robert Dorgan was essentially because I believe she listed that he had narcissistic tendencies and personality disorders. And then on top of that, with that frail mindset, you're choosing 5 or 6 years ago to go through reassignment surgery, which is only going to make everything more difficult for you because that's basically creating a new life for yourself. And if you don't have the mindset to go through the transition process, then you shouldn't transition in the first place. You shouldn't really transition because it's already going to be difficult enough. But when you add mental illness to the equation, it's just not going to make anything easier for you. It's not going to be this happy pill you take with a cup and it's all of a sudden going to miraculously heal all your struggles overnight. That's just not how it works. But that's the risk he took by making that choice. And he probably thought that once he transitioned, his life would be better overnight. But it wasn't the case. And look who ended up suffering as a result of it. His ex-wife was shot, didn't survive. His oldest son was shot. He was under critical care, but hours later he passed away as well. I don't know exactly what incited him to go this far, but when you think about it, I believe there was an article I also read which stated that I don't know if what was happening if they were living with the his ex-in-laws, which are the ex-wife's parents. I'm gonna go on a limb and say that's a possibility because the the father, his ex-in-law, said to the tune that he won't have a tranny living here. So I don't know if that psychologically was imprinted inside his mind and he never got over it. But if that's the case, that probably was sitting inside him for a very long time, and he just didn't know how to let go of that anger, and that anger eventually turned into hatred for his family. It's a shame that it went that far. I don't believe that you should ever, go that far with your family just because you're unhappy with your own life. This is what I said also when I was covering the Canada shooting last week. I said, if you're ever going to pull a gun, don't include others in your mayhem. I will never suggest to pull a gun on yourself, but if your intention is to hurt people and then put the gun and pull the trigger towards yourself, then you should do that at first. That should be your step one, not going after people, and then shooting yourself like a coward. That's what really irritates me about these stories is that you take the lives of innocent people, and then when you're confronted with the reality of your mistake, then all of a sudden you want to pull the trigger and end it. You should have done it you should have ended yourself from the very beginning if that's how you felt. But instead you wanted to put other people at risk because of your own unhappiness. That just fuels me with anger because I just don't know how people can operate from that angle. You know, obviously you should never commit S. That should never be a thought in your mind. But at some point, if you're gonna ever commit S, don't include other people beforehand. Other people shouldn't be responsible for your unhappiness unless you feel that you're doing it for self-defense or something of that nature because you're in a toxic or abusive relationship. You should never go that far with anyone. So as a result, there were multiple people shot and multiple people unfortunately passed away. It's just tragic when you think about it, though, and how people have just really how they flip their script and they just don't really think about what they're doing anymore. It's just happening very frequently. But essentially, this is a story that I am most likely going to keep covering more and more. Uh, I really haven't really pieced all the details together. So this is definitely a story that will be covering again because there's just a lot of layers that I might have been unable to cover so far. But that is definitely a situation will, that this is a story that I will address later on. This took place in Pawtucket, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And it's just unfortunate that so many people in his family had to lose their lives because of his ego getting in the way of this deciphering what between right and wrong. But essentially, that's tragic, right? It's just tragic what happened. There are other stories that I will be covering as well. I don't know if I probably covered them next week because I don't want to get too off topic. And I'm really busy today. I didn't really think I would have the chance to even go live in the first place, but I wanted to go live and just share this. This is the second shooting within what is it, this past week, and it's from a trans individual, and it's just sad that a lot of people refuse to admit that transitioning isn't always the same for everyone. They sell you this idea that if you transition, you're automatically going to adjust well. But that's just not the case. That's not the case. Maybe you just feel unhappy that you are not um, confident in your own gender, or you're doing it because you're being misled by your thoughts, thinking that transitioning is going to automatically give you a second chance in life. And that's not always the case. It can be the case for certain people, but it isn't the same case for everyone. And for people like this, it's just outrageous how things unfold with some people. But really, that's really wanted what I wanted to essentially share today. I definitely am trying to become more strategic and tactical when I go live. Please remember that anything that I cover during this live, there is always a chance for a margin of error, or it might not have all the information you need. So if you want to follow this story or do more research on it, I highly suggest that just don't take my word of mouth as just facts. I could always be wrong in some shape or form. But that's essentially what I wanted to cover. And if you are part of the gang, it's a gland almost. If you're part of the replay gang, please click that like button if you watch this live stream later on. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to see if I can make the next live a little bit longer. If not, I'm just going to try to do at least maybe two lives at some point and see how that works out. I have no scheduled date for that yet, because I'm still trying to get in the groove of going live, and I'm still not adjusting well, if you will. I will say I've gone live at least 4 weeks straight, so I guess that's what is it? A net plus, but I still have a long way to go. Um, and I'm still just trying to figure it out as I go. So it's a work in progress. But we'll see we'll eventually see where it leads. Uh, Anyways, I'm just gonna let you guys go. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for tuning in if you did, and make sure to click that like button on your way out. Thank you.